Sustainable You is a casual, interactive, yet informative series detailing and cataloging the sustainability experience. Moreover, this is a short podcast docuseries detailing the thoughts and experiences of passionate advocates towards all things eco-friendly. Our journey is to know how and why understanding sustainable development towards the triple bottom line of people, profit, and planet can contribute to a more mindful, holistic, and inclusive world. Specifically, this podcast showcases what makes you a changemaker, innovator, and transformer as you tackle sustainability challenges for current and future generations to resolve the so-called wicked problems. The Red Rebel Brigade is an international performance activist troupe that utilizes silent, slow-motion performance and non-violent civil disobedience towards climate action, drawing attention to the burgeoning global ecological crisis, symbolizing the loss of life from environmental destruction. Participating members in the acts of protest are depicted for their distinctive appearance as they don vivacious scarlet red robes, veils, and gloves alongside opaque white face paint. The color of red itself is symbolic of the lifeblood that connects all species, as the mantra goes, advocating against animal cruelty and for environmental stewardship. I first came across the Red Rebel Brigade during my travels overseas studying abroad in Visby, Sweden, last summer in June 2024. I was simply mesmerized by their unwavering dramatics as the Red Rebels drifted elegantly through the heart of the old town's main square. It definitely leaves a worthwhile and lingering impression for onlookers who fussily try to clue in on what the act itself depicts. It was fascinating to discover how the artistic medium of performance activism can mobilize others to gain a sense of agency and adopt an ethic of care toward combating the climate crisis. In this inside scoop and in-depth two-part episode series, we invite you to learn more about the Red Rebel Brigade and its revelation with its founder, Doug Francisco, a multidisciplinary artist, activist, and storyteller who has a background in music, street performance, and theater. So, stay tuned and enjoy. So why is nonviolence and active mutual support critical to, I guess, going back to your values as a climate justice movement?
Well, I mean, it's at the core of, I know it's in our nature, to be, we've got the fight or flight thing, we've got the kind of instincts from the cave times and, all this stuff. And we can, when, that's what I mean about that volatile atmospheres or, pressed into a situation, we will fight to survive on the whole, I think, probably. From our kind of, I'm not even really sure of that. I think it's sort of, that is intrinsically who we are. And in my experience, despite what the media or the social media sort of gives you the impression of the way that it kind of shows you all of these hostile forces, and a lot of hostile, violent forces are actually, controlled by the state. It's not like, it's not purely sort of the fact of the human condition. And also poverty, poverty creates crime. When people are hungry and when they can't feed their children and all these sorts of things, then, they will react in that sort of ways. But I think intrinsically, deep down, that's the way things have to be done. And my experience has been in disaster zones and stuff like that, especially after the tsunami or Hurricane Katrina. I was in America at that time. And I've been in a few of those sort of situations, and people sort of automatically collaborate and help each other, and that's kind of, I think, more the human condition than fighting and confronting each other, I think. And in general, I think that is part of our core of who we are. And I think everything else is kind of trained into us, and that's part of the problem of media, isn't it? And social media and violence on screen and all these kind of, we're being sort of trained to be otherwise. But there's an element of sort of the fear of predators from our ancient history makes us defensive, but obviously the predators are getting less and less, and we've only got each other now.
That's
And people
true.
are driven and divided by the power structures above them, I think. So it's also, it's hard to say that. Yeah, I just intrinsically believe that we can all get along, because that's been my actual experience with people that I've met in hardship situations of my own. And I think that it serves the powers that be and the vested interests that are responsible for this disaster of our times. It serves them for us to be divided and turned against each other. But I don't think that's how it actually is in the real world.
Yeah, no, definitely. It's counterintuitive when you think about climate action and activism, but I think that's what makes it so intriguing, at least why I wanted to learn more about it. And just on this next one, so what is the message the Red Rebel Brigade hopes to convey, I guess, to the misinformed public about animal cruelty? So what atrocities, I guess, against animals do you hope to shed light on? So, of course, things like animal trafficking and poaching and factory farming. I know there's a lot of movements out there that do that, but what is kind of your perspective on that?
Yeah, I mean, again, we will have gone out on protest directly on those kind of issues for sure. Factory farming and eating meat and stuff is at the core of the planet's destruction, isn't it? Pretty much, and the kind of the mass clearing of forests, the Amazon rainforest being cleared for beef farming, cattle farming, and stuff like that. So again, it's kind of the blood of all species and this sort of empathy that you have to have with all living things. I guess again, it's that emotional. We're just trying to establish this emotional connection, and we're wearing that emotional state for people to see and to feel. And really, it's kind of very broad and quite undefined as to what. There's no sort of hard, fast rules about the Red Rebels. We go out for the climate and for life, really. Again, it's not centrally controlled either. So people have gone out for different things, for homelessness, anti-hunting, all sorts of different things. Palestinian cause, for the anti-war marches and stuff like this. So there's been a lot of different groups of self-organizing in that sense. But that kind of emphasizing with the loss of species, and also the imprisonment of species, obviously, like mass consumer farming and stuff. It's horrific. It's a horrific industry, isn't it? And again, it's kind of responsible for so much climate degradation. So that's a huge change for people to have to kind of come to terms with, really. It's another big challenge.
No, it's definitely difficult. And just more, because I wanted to ask more about your performance act, even though you've kind of really hashed out all the details. So the question is, what does the significance of particularly the red color in your acts of peaceful civil disobedience symbolize? And again, if you could talk a bit more about the color. And I'm also interested in the costume itself. So how you design the costume. So yeah, if you want to talk more about that.
Yeah, I mean, I can't actually remember why I chose red. And I think a lot of it was just that I thought it would look beautiful, in a purely aesthetic kind of costume designery sort of way from performance. And it was afterwards thinking about it's the colour of blood, it's the colour of stop signs. It's like passion. It's like flamenco. It's a bit like Fellini films. There's all these associations. It's romantic. It's red like roses. All of these things that kind of resonate about it. And we've done stuff with like blue costumes and green costumes, and they're also very beautiful. But yeah, I guess there's something, again, sort of iconic, and people recognize it, and I don't know why. No, I can't figure out what thing it is in history or in performance or in film, or whether it's religious, because there's a lot of that use of that color in religion traditions as well, but people just recognize it. And yeah, like I said, all of those associations we sort of wrote down or thought about afterwards. But yeah, I can't actually remember why I thought that, other than I thought it would look beautiful and striking. And then, it's only because this guy had 8 bin bags full of red velvet from a cabaret venue that he just replied to my Facebook post going, yeah, I could drop it around tomorrow. It's the only reason it's kind of the only reason it happened as well, because I don't know where I would have got enough red fabric from. And that was a bit the same. The costume was based on these human statue costumes we used to use and make. And in the 80s, and we'd make them out of old bed sheets and buy gloves from wedding shops. And we were traveling in Spain at the time. So, white was a very common it's a very common fabric to be able to come by, like white shirts. You find there's always a lot of clothes and stuff and bins and things like that in Spain. So it's quite easy to sort of scavenge these and make these robes, classic robes, a bit like the Greeks. And we had sort of the dangling bits that would sort of, and again, it was really interesting. People would imprint their things on us as to what we were. We used to have like a headpiece, sort of pointed on the headpiece, like a Ku Klux Klan thing or anything, with a sort of curly headpiece. And lots of people thought we were Arabs, sort of the Arabs in the southern Spain, because there's a big Moorish influence there from when the Moors were in the south of Spain. So when we were there, people would be like, they say the ultima Moros, like the last of the Moors, and when we were in Templar towns, where the Knights Templar had been, which was like a religious order of monks from the 12th century, they would be like, it's the Templars. And if we performed there's a lot of religious festivals, so they'd be the Catholic religious festivals. We'd have these like little old ladies kind of crossing themselves because we were like religious statues come to life. So people would say all these different things, that we're time travelers and all these different things, and it was always really interesting to hear what people said about us rather than telling people what we were as such. But by necessity, the costumes were quite easy to make. So you could literally, put a sheet over your head and tie some headbands around and then drape some sheets with a white shirt and some gloves. And so it could be made quite quickly, and a belt. So you had the kind of the statuesque robes, and we'd literally kind of, almost like painting ourselves into the bits of architecture. And then people would think that we were statues, and then we'd come to life, basically. It's quite amazing how it became quite a common thing to see human statues, and hence the kind of magic of it sort of dissolved. Initially, people were super, we blocked streets in all over Spain. And coming back to England, even we performed in Liverpool city centre, which is like quite a big city, and brought the whole of the city centre to a standstill because they'd never seen anything like it. Which, Liverpool's quite a lively, the people from Liverpool are quite lively, they're not like an arty crowd or anything like that. It's quite working class and stuff. So yeah, they sort of had they have all these qualities, I guess, from those sort of bygone eras. And a lot of it was just like simplicity. You could make it with a glue gun. You didn't need to be good at sewing because I wasn't very good at sewing. You put a few stitches in to hold it in place here and there maybe, but you could kind of stick them together and make them quite quickly. Yeah. So that was the design in a way. Yeah. I literally just copied it from those shows, really. And it was a beautiful kind of incarnation of that, because we travelled the world making those shows in the 80s. And the last time we actually performed en masse with it was at the anti-Iraq War March in 2003, I think it was, in London. And that was when they first kind of went mobile as characters. So bringing that back in Red for the climate all those years later was kind of a beautiful thing as well.
Okay, great. Yeah, no, I didn't know it was involved in political activism. And I like how you say it's like a mashup of bygone eras in a way you're portraying it. And just to backtrack a bit, when did you start doing this? Because it seems like you've been doing it for a while. But I guess when did you formalize and officially launch the Red Rebel Brigade?
Yeah, that first Red Rebel thing was in April of 2019 for the first Extinction Rebellion kind of mass London uprising thing. But those characters, I was performing in white with those from like 1994 till probably around 2004 or something like that. And then there's like a break of all those years, and we brought them back in red.
Wow, that's amazing. And I noticed that like a lot of the performance acts, at least I've seen one in person, but I'm just browsing stuff on social media and online. A lot of the acts by activists they seem to be open for the public to participate. So is it to whoever has a keen interest? Can they be a part of this? Like, is it more of like a flash mob, or is it more for a trained actor? Like, how is it done intentionally?
Yeah. It's really open, and that was part of the idea, was that anyone could do it. Well, it's what happened initially. It's kind of what happened. We had a troupe from Bristol that were all performance based that came up, And so it was all performers doing it that we were sort of new from Bristol as part of our community for the first 3 or 4 days. And then some people had to leave. And there was we knew other performers in London as well. But then, then some people that weren't performers, it was because we were running low on numbers after 5 days or something. So then other people just started to join in. And that's become a real part of it. There's always there's usually a few people that have done it before. So we sort of induct new people by joining a group. And we do have workshops and things like that when we can, but also you can just kind of turn up and do it with people. So you just, again, because you're in procession, so you just do what they're doing in front of you, as long as you can we'll have a little warm up where we kind of get everyone to kind of center and, relax, and to do that breathing and the slow motion thing, and to get everybody in that kind of zone. But yeah, it's very accessible in that sense, and that's part of what is so beautiful about it, as well as that it can, anyone can come and do it. So we've been really sort of open with that, and people get in touch going, I get emails every week from people saying, can you tell me is there a group in this country or this part of this country? We connect people through the email and the website. We sort of put them in touch with people in the Netherlands or Italy, or like I said, someone wrote in from Canada. So, there's still time, Canada. Maybe Calgary could be the first.
No, it's great to hear. I love how accessible and how inclusive it is. Again, compared to those generic mainstream climate activism protests where it seems like you really need to be a strong proponent and be very much involved in that scene. And it doesn't seem like you need a particular skill set to become a change maker or climate action leader. And I guess just on that, do you think, because there are certain skills that in general you should have if you want to go more into climate activism and performance activism towards that? Do you have any insight on that?
Yes, it's, any kind of physical performance or acting training or anything like that is great, but it's not like it's necessary either. So in terms of that sort of performance activism stuff, I guess, but I think it is just about people stepping up, and likewise with other parts of the activist movement is quite sort of accessible in that sense. And I think it is about people mobilizing and feeling like they have some purchase, that they can do something, you know what I mean? Yeah, I think it's all about kind of the individual. And for me, it was the same a little bit. Even though I've always been involved with this sort of stuff, it was about just going, I just want to do something that's that cuts through the bull. And I'm really good with words. I do a lot of hosting as a ringmaster at the circus, so I'm a really good speaker, as you can tell from me rambling on here all the time. But I could have gone up and done something with a stage on a microphone or something like that, and I just wanted to do something that was kind of beyond all that, and something sort of beautiful and inspiring and different for myself, I guess. I didn't want to go and do the things I'd done before. So that was kind of, that's the beautiful thing. We've had, I can't remember how old, there's a lady from Belgium who's 82, I think, and there's a 92-year-old person came out with us one time as well. So it's and like I say, people from across the board, and people that were really sort of shy and, wouldn't say boo to a goose, as they say, have been stood there staring in the face of authority, which is a amazing kind of thing.
Yeah, no, it's definitely nice, because in at least in Calgary, whenever I covered those climate protests, especially for Extinction Rebellion, it seems you need to be very vocal. You need to be very much in the know of what's going on, and I think maybe it kind of deters others from wanting to participate because maybe they're not as authentic, or they don't really know what's going on. So it's nice to have this other way of going about it, because there's so many mediums, I guess, in which you can do that. And whether you're a journalist or you're an actor or performer, no, it's great to hear. Okay, great.
Yeah, it can really it can really burn you out, can't it, as well, but doing those other things. I think a lot of people went through that, where they just got super involved, super engaged, and then super burnt out. And I guess being able to kind of drop in and out of something as well, just because you can't dedicate, your whole life or however many days a week or a month or whatever it is, if you can't, for whatever reasons, you've got family, you've got work, you're not that kind of person, whatever it is, it's nice to feel that there's other ways for you to to express your grief and to participate in that whole thing. So I guess there's an element of that as well. It makes it so, and I've done it myself as well, just turning up on foot in my normal self, just for the numbers. Some protests I've gone to like that as well, just to kind of be there because I felt moved to be there, to be part of this mass, So yeah, again, it's open to all, isn't it? And it's this sort of getting over this kind of barrier there is maybe inside yourself to just go along and do these things, because we've nothing to lose apart from everything.
That's true. No, I like that. I like your take on that. How does ecological modernization, human progress, so how do they play into the idea of sustainability in resolving the climate change crisis? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, they sort of, they don't, do they? Because they've created the climate crisis more or less the way that they've been managed up until now. It's just the fact that now we have the know-how, the technology, and the resources to be able to do things differently, and all of that kind of, all that learning that indigenous communities have been aware of and using for centuries, millennia even. That is coming more around to being like, okay, that's the way we're meant to be doing it. And it's quite a long way back to that from where we are now with mass industrialization and cities and all this sort of stuff. But we actually have the resources and the mental, the awareness and the capacity, that, I don't know, it's kind of egotistical to say other species don't have that, but they don't have opposable thumbs, for one thing, and they don't collaborate en masse the way that humans do, for all the wrong reasons, admittedly, a lot of the time. But we have that capacity, and so we do have the capacity to change it, I guess. And slowly and quickly in some places, there is change, and just by being involved with things, I've kind of come to a more hopeful place, because I do see progress and I do see change, and I do see a lot of people doing a lot of great stuff. It's just where you look, you need to kind of switch off a lot of the mainstream stuff that's fed to you, so that you can kind of focus on the positives and the ways forward, because we're kind of bombarded with being sold lots of stuff and being told that's the only way it can be. That's one thing about the pandemic, was that after saying that planes can't stop flying and business can't stop running and all these things, suddenly everything did stop, and we're all still here. Unfortunately, it sort of came back even more fiercely, it seems, in some senses, but we can stop the machine, we can change the direction of things, and we can, build a different world. It's just whether we will in time or not, yeah. I guess.
Okay, no, definitely it's interesting to get your insight on that. And do you find that like the Red Rebel Brigade, does it like kind of I guess almost advocate for degrowth? And I'm sure you've heard about the degrowth manifesto. Do you find that it contributes to it? Well, I can just read off what degrowth is, just to give a definition maybe of some listeners out there who don't know what it means. But basically, degrowth refers to the critique of capitalist growth that emphasizes organizing the economy around human needs rather than capital interests. I guess, like, what are your thoughts on the whole degrowth movement and decommodification? Because you talked a lot about that today. I guess in terms of especially living more mindfully towards minimalism.
Yeah, I mean, growth is the problem, isn't it? The sort of striving for continual economic growth means making more things and selling more things. And despite all of the kind of blah, blah, blah around the climate and stuff, a lot of governments and societies, and my own included here in England, it's all about growth, and they're not. Yeah, because economy, sort of the whole model is so flawed because of that, really. And it's obvious, it's glaringly obvious that those are the kind of drivers that are creating, like, that's the reason that the beach in the middle of nowhere in Panama is full of plastic. That's the reason the ocean is full of plastic, that we're full of plastic. It's because we've made all of this stuff and sold it for $1 and, thrown it away once it's broken, or once we've carried it home in the plastic bag. All this kind of, it's crazy. It's really, really crazy when you actually zoom out and think about it. Yeah, degrowth is the sort of way. And I guess, I mean, again, we're very we kept it really simple. Like, we go out for the climate, and that's kind of everything else that falls out of that, like animal welfare, degrowth, like all these different movements, anti-war, obviously all kind of falls out of that. If there's any kind of, the positives are of the communities of people that come together around it, I guess, and the way it might bring people into those communities and bring people into that that notion of a different way of living. And I think that's the same thing with Extinction Rebellion here. It kind of brought in all of these people, all these kind of, normal people, if you want to put it in those terms, who are actually, super concerned and super conscientious and have just been kind of shut out and shut up and consumers, you know what I mean? And that's the thing, isn't it? If you keep people isolated, and the more isolated you are, and the more depressed you are, and the more lonely you are, the more you need things to make you feel better, and even though they don't, and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of how society is sort of geared to generate that thing. And when you find community, and when you build community, and when you feel a part of a collective thing, which I feel really, it's a big thing in, I guess, being part of the circus community or something like that. When you're part of a community like that, it's a real luxury that a lot of people aren't. A lot of people don't feel that, and it's hard to find. I think that there's a community spirit that comes with the Red Rebels and with activism and with caring, which I think sort of helps to percolate those kind of thoughts and feelings and therefore ways of being.
Yeah, definitely. No, it's really what I really love about the Red Rebel Brigade. It really ignites that kind of that community spiritness that you said, and that and I totally agree. It is about relationship building. Just on that too. And again, you spoke a bit about this before, but how do you find that? Because you're really knowledgeable on this, so I'm interested to hear your perspective. But how do you find that people and organizations can balance sustainable goals while also striving towards economic growth? So when you even read off the word sustainable development, it seems like it's contradicting itself. It's a paradox in and of itself. Do you have any maybe thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think people need to use less stuff, it's the bottom line.
Straight and simple.
And we've got such a lot of stuff already, like, I don't know, isn't there enough clothes on the planet for the next 6 generations or something already? And I sort of buy all my clothes pretty much secondhand, and that that's a fairly. I've always kind of mostly bought secondhand things, I guess, and recycle things. But recently, I've become really like, I'm not going to buy anything new ever again since I heard that fact, And so sustainable development. I mean, I don't know. I feel like it's all just greenwash, and it's hard to make. I remember this like years and years ago in London when I was how old was I? I was like 19 or 20 maybe. And I remember listening to this lady it was some kind of like a World Economic Forum or something. It was on the radio, and she was talking about how the grain of India was sent to America to feed the cattle. And she's like, our children starve so that yours can grow fat on beef burgers, And it was part of this world. Really, like, I wish I knew who she was, because she was the most succinct sort of speaker. And it was like this kind of quite dry conference sort of thing, and she just came on and just cut through the bull, so to speak, and was like, the travesty is that you guys don't seem to think that it's economically viable to save the world, and that's the kind of bottom line of it, isn't it? It's like, so I don't know. I think we need to get off of that gross profit thing and start to see the value in survival pretty soon. Yeah, we are sort of doomed. I swing wildly between thinking we're doomed and thinking it's hopeful, and I don't mind either way either. That's part of what the Red Rebels are about. It's like we are, blessed to be a witness, in fact, if anything. And I don't, I'm okay with it. I'm okay with whatever way it goes, really. And I'll do my utmost to make it a more positive direction for future generations as well. And that's part of the problem, is our time here is so short, so we don't really have this perception too far ahead. But I think the growth is kind of the problem, and every time it comes back to that, we need to redesign the economic models. And that's it. And again, it's annoying because it's not beyond our reach to design a different. It's what happened in the pandemic, isn't it? In England anyway, they gave people money to survive in a various clunky systems that did it, and no one did it. It was only essential workers could go out and work. And that made me think, well, what are all these non-essential people doing all the time? Why are we doing all this non-essential stuff if all we need is, like, we could all share those essential jobs and just work a couple of days a week and have time to write poetry and hang out with your kids or whatever it is you want to do. Which again, it's just sad, isn't it? We work really hard. We kind of worked workaholics and then playaholics because we have to kind of recover from working, and people are kind of on this clock, working really hard every day, letting off a bit of steam, which is just enough to kind of get you back to work. And like, people could be having such a more beautiful time. And even though, obviously in history, I'm sure poverty, there's positive wise, there's more people living a better life for longer now than ever before, per capita probably, and just generally on the planet. But we could all be living like kings and queens, really, and not in the sense that we can just have as much stuff as we want, but that we could be lounging around the garden, writing poetry, and sipping lemonade instead of being at work 5 days a week,
No.
And that's not good. That's not going to come from growth. That's only going to be there for a few people to lounge around doing very little. Well, the rest of us that work really hard, but we could all be doing that, and that's kind of what we should be doing, I think, and being a bit more spiritually minded and pondering the cosmos and, playing with kids. Kids are great.
No, it's definitely, you mentioned COVID. I think it was really bad, the lockdown, at least in Alberta, the province I'm from. And I think it was maybe the English-speaking countries, because I remember when I was in Sweden and we had to do research or thesis, just coming around and speaking to business owners, they didn't have, I think, the lockdown or the passports and to go to events. I think I kind of like the way that they took a more lax approach to it, because it really made me put into perspective. Like you said, it's very much a workaholic culture. It's even worse in the States, I find. So it's definitely interesting to hear your perspective. And I think too, whenever I ask people sustainable development, it is a paradox. It is an oxymoron. It doesn't really, how does that work? Because you're right, there's a lot of examples around the world. For example, for our research, we came across how bad greenwashing is for certain certifications. So things like the B Corp, whereas we really adhere to that B Corp certification here in Canada and the US, because it is an American standard that they've set. In Sweden, they don't really acknowledge it. They think they have their own, their Nordic Eco Swan label, they have different ones. But when I talk to people around the world, for example, there's this one organic farmer, this fashion brand that worked with organic farmers in India, and she had mentioned that the B Corp certificate, they refuse to acknowledge it because it's actually doing a lot of greenwashing, and they don't really acknowledge the chemicals and the pesticides that they use to process the cotton, and they're using GMO seeds from the US, so it gets very convoluted. So this is more in terms of political question, I guess. So what are the current and potential policy interventions that can promote, I guess, more eco-friendly and sustainable practices and trends towards the climate change crisis? How can the average person, and of course Red Rebel Brigade is one medium, but how can they get, I guess, more involved in political advocacy in environmentalism if they don't know where to get started?
Yeah, that's a good question. And a lot of, like I said, consumer choices and the power of what you buy and how you consume is a big thing. It felt like it was, things were changed. I can't remember what the campaigns were in the 70s, but things were, people stopped buying stuff and it made a difference. And I think that's still happening today. And I mean, on a big scale, I guess the Tesla things that's just gone off has done that. Yeah, it's finding ways to engage with it, isn't it? And like I said, the political stuff and there's such a lot of bureaucracy and red tape that it's designed to kind of disengage you and keep you out. It's not designed to keep you in and bring you into the process, really. It's so kind of complicated and fun. But those, I still sign all my petitions and write to my MPs about things. It doesn't seem to make any difference, but I do all that as well. Yeah, joining proactive groups, supporting organisations that are really proactive in the areas that you feel about as well, and supporting organisations that challenge those things in the courts and stuff like that is a way to do it. Financially, if you have that capacity, I guess. A lot of those campaigns and causes survive from donors. Or, finding grassroots work, grassroots organisations. That's one of the great things about the Extinction Rebellion model, I guess, is about your local community. So just reaching out to people around you and making those small changes, that's really where it begins. Like campaigning for that bit of woodland or park or whatever to not be turned into flats, and blocking those things and building those community gardens, and just acting local and impacting globally, I think. I don't know what else you can really do. Other than start taking action in a small way around you. And the ripples of that go quite far. And there's been a lot of amazing victories from those small grassroots actions and activities. And I think that's where it begins.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree, because I saw how things like Extinction Rebellion, they really gained momentum during that lockdown time during COVID. And there was I guess civil disobedience in general, because we had a lot of refugees coming in from Ukraine and Iran. And of course, we had this climate crisis going on too. So I've never really seen my hometown like that before. So it's definitely interesting to see that. But I agree. I think it's just a matter of educating people and getting more involved. I think that's the best we can do. Okay, great. And do you have any final advice to those, I guess, who are interested in citizen activism and nonviolent civil disobedience in general for climate action and even performance activism? Do you want to share your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I just say do it. It's fun. It's really fun. That was what it came down to for me. It was such fun, and I really enjoyed. It's like the city becomes your theatre stage, and you can just play with it, and that was really beautiful and really fun. And the same, I was going to say that about joining local activities and local groups. It's fun. It's good to connect. It's it makes your world richer now, whatever your fears for the future. Or there's that thing, isn't there, of the ghosts of the past chasing at our heels and the beasts of the future waiting to catch us, but we're always just in the now, and neither of those things quite seem to come for us, and that state of fear or disillusionment or depression or any of these things is, that's one of the most awful things about it. I genuinely sort of, the ignorant are blessed, and it's harder and harder to be ignorant, but in that sense, to know it and to acknowledge it and to feel it and to see it and to still be able to find happiness and to have fun with your people, with your community. That's kind of the major thing. Whatever it is, go and I don't know, sit in the street and paint pictures or whatever these things are, however you can find. I'm really promoting random acts of beauty. The positive apocalypse is another one of my campaign slogans. We don't have to suffer more than we have to suffer. And there's a lot of people suffering in the world from hardships brought upon them by others in war zones, in so many different situations, and to try and help that, and you need to also first and foremost kind of lift yourself up and keep yourself afloat and keep yourself buoyant. And that's why I was feeling depressed and disillusioned, and even within my own kind of wacky alternative circus company, I was like, oh, what are we doing? Commercially working at festivals, all these people are just here getting drunk, and what do they care? And oh my God. And I just wanted to do something that would lift me up, and it made me happy, and it made me happy to confront policemen in such a way that they were just human again as well. And I had really good connections, and I had some really great connections with police people as well over the climate thing. Breaking down barriers, all that stuff, it just makes me happier. And I think that's ultimately why I do it, is because it makes me happy. And that's the best thing I can do and be for the world, I think. And for all the lofty aspirations that you want to change the world, you want to save the whales, you want to, do, all those outcomes would be amazing. When I really dug down into it, the reasons that I do it is because it just makes me happier, it makes me feel better. And I need to feel better to be able to kind of face the situation and kind of deal with it constructively, I think. So yeah, I would encourage everyone to random acts of beauty and being happier and having some fun in the face of adversity.
Yeah, no, it's definitely, again, very insightful and sage advice for our listeners out there. And I guess that's all the questions on my end, but do you have maybe anything that I missed, any last advice you want to give I missed, or any questions that you have? If you want to share anything else, it's up to you.
No, I mean, you can, I guess I could do some brutal self-publicity or something, but you can follow me around on anti-social media and stuff. But I'm currently, my next thing is to try and sort of do more with this sea plastic project called Plastic Paradiso that I work with. So, I'm kind of tuning back into that, which is where it all began in some ways, was finding all this sea plastic on the beach in Panama. And I'm working on a book of the Red Rebels as well, to sort of capture some of the stories of the people that have done it, as well as the story of how it came about, and lots of beautiful images that people have donated of it. Yeah, my health's a little bit troubled, so I haven't been out on the streets as much as I used to be, but I still get out and perform with the Red Rebels as well. And that is a really beautiful thing to do. So, if Canada if you've got a lot of listeners in Canada, I'd encourage you to engage with the situation creatively. It's a lot of fun. And yeah, thanks for asking me along. And there's some great questions in there, which is really great to sort of be provoked to think about all of these things, why you do these things and what they hope to achieve and what they mean and what they are for you as well. So yeah, I've really enjoyed talking to you.
Thank you so much. And likewise, I got so much out of this, and hopefully, as you mentioned, you did too. And thank you so much, Doug, for being part of this episode tonight.
Thanks so much for tuning in to yet another eye-opening episode of Sustainable You. Again, this is an extraordinary and engaging info series whose purpose is to make sustainable development and sustainability accessible to the average person in their quest to quench their knowledge on environmentalism. Be sure to leave your feedback by liking this week's released edition and by subscribing to this podcast. Again, any love from our followers is much appreciated. Signing off, until next time.